Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mikey J. I'm filling in for Chris Cuneo, and you're watching KGUP Presents on inDtv, channel 140 on the Universe Network.
Just another day breathing dust in the heat beat, and all that I feel is worn at the end of the day. And I'm afraid on the bus home, I'm staring at the floor. She's putting on her lipstick, thinking of the night, and she catches me smiling as I'm walking through the door. All is forgotten.
Right now, we'd like to introduce a band that has been a part of the KGUP family for a very long time. We've been spinning their music on KGUP FM Emerge Radio for almost as long as we've been playing music. And yes, we are a little biased because, for good reason, because they're awesome. They've won several music recognition awards, and they've been mentioned by nearly every independent publication, and that's got to tell you a little bit about how good they are. KGUP would like to present, and we are very proud to have Will Carpenter of Ships Have Sailed.
Thank you so much. So nice to be here.
It's great to finally meet you. I mean, we've met each other in passing, and it's, I think it was at the LA Music Awards, half a dozen years ago.
Probably about that. Yeah, sounds about right.
It's great to actually have you on the show. It's our first season of KGUP Presents.
Well, thank you for having me, and this is actually really fitting because, as you mentioned, you've been playing our tunes for a really long time. You mentioned almost as long as you've been playing music. It is actually as long as we have been making music as Ships Have Sailed. So, funny story, you guys were the first. I don't even know how you found our stuff, honestly. It was right when we released our very first single, which was a song called Midnight, and we did not do any press around it. We just kind of put it out into the world and spun up some social accounts, and that was it. So I don't know how honestly anybody found it, but you guys found it, and the next thing we knew, we had fans in Canada and the UK, and it's great because we still keep in touch with those people to this day, and so thank you. I mean, you guys hold a special place in our hearts as well.
I think it was one of our Twitter fans that actually listened to our station and recommended your song Midnight.
Really?
Yeah, loving the music, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, okay. I know her well. She is from the UK, and yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, thank you for taking her advice. That's amazing.
Once I heard the song, I was like, well, you're an avid listener of the station, so yeah, we'll put the song on.
Nice.
You're working on your fourth album, is that correct?
Well, so I guess it depends on whether you consider EPs as albums. We have one full length that we've released, and I'm working on a group of songs right now that it hasn't really quite determined whether it's going to be an album or a couple of EPs or just continue to be singles, but there's definitely something brewing, and it's been a really fruitful year creatively. So I'm just waiting to get kind of an idea of where it needs to go from there. But yeah, we have a few EPs and a full-length album out, so I would say probably, depending on your determination of what that means, it would be either the fourth or the fifth when an album materializes.
All right, so tell us about the history of Ships Have Sailed. What was your inspiration to create the project?
Yeah, it's a good story. Kind of informative of my silver lining approach to this project. This Ships Have Sailed began as kind of a group of songs that weren't a fit for the the project that I was in at the time. It had a very specific genre, genre blend, and so the type of songs that we were able to pursue for that project were really, really specific, and these ones just didn't fit in. But I didn't want to pitch them for other artists, and so I started just kind of like hacking together some demo production on my own. I was not a very good producer back then, but I felt a connection to these songs and just wanted to see where it went. So it started as just kind of like a side project in my home studio. And, you know, as they were developing and kind of getting closer to being able to put them out into the world, I was getting the sounds that I wanted, and with a lot of help from a good friend of mine. The other project was kind of simultaneously like on the downturn. And so I was focusing more energy on this, and at the same time kind of processing how much time and energy I'd put into that one, and the fact that, you know, things were looking grim. And that's kind of how this project started. It was kind of like one thing born out of another almost, and you know, no regrets. Good things come and go in life, and sometimes they don't always work out the way you have planned them to go. And as long as something good comes out of it, I think you're on the right track.
Where are you originally from?
I grew up in Vermont, so very cold, very boring, and lots of time to figure out how to hack around instruments and make crappy, angsty music and explore songwriting as a kid.
So what brought you out to LA?
So I went to school in Boston, and I basically moved out here right after. I had a couple sisters who moved out here first, so I came out to visit them on spring break, and you know, a lot of folks are in music school in Boston, so there are a whole bunch of opinions about LA and this type of city it is and whatever, so people were talking lots of smack about it. And I came out here and I just loved the place immediately. You know, every place has its ups and its downs, but for me, LA was, you know, beautiful in kind of like a gritty, surreal sort of way, if that makes sense. Like the weather is just, you know, you can't really ask for better. And the grime that there is kind of like, it's like a classic kind of grime. So I don't know. From the moment I first visited out here, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna move.
I'm not as innocent as I used to be, and I probably care too much.
Tell us about the music style, like what makes your music unique?
A lot of really great indie rock bands out there. I've taken to describing us as indie rock with kind of a poptimistic lean, if you will. And so we explore all areas of the genre blend that could be considered indie rock. And we do tend to lean a little bit pop. But even when we explore kind of like darker concepts for music, I try to always bring in some sort of silver lining into it. So I like to always be slightly hopeful, even if I'm addressing more of a melancholy topic. And I think that is one of the things that people gravitate towards most. And also the fact that, you know, I recognize that indie rock is a pretty broad genre, and I feel like, you know, many artists kind of like think they have to be completely cohesive, having an album sound exactly the same from front to back. And I'm a big fan of those albums that kind of wander, but do so in a connected sort of way so that the whole thing tells a story, but it doesn't have to all be the same. So that's kind of my philosophy around the music, is you can wander as long as you do it in kind of a connected fashion, and as long as it's not too jarring, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I mean, over the years, even when I was younger, I mean, some of the artists that I liked had multiple different, you know, genres within the same music. I mean, like The Cure, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all over the place.
Absolutely. I mean, and they were known for they were known for being kind of like dark electro gothy, like, for the time, right? And then they put out a single like It's Friday, I'm in Love, and it's just like, whoa. It is a little bit jarring, because if you like listen through to Disintegration and then put on that single, it's going to throw you for a little bit of a loop. But it is also one of the things that I love about them. They can do all of that perfectly.
I mean, yeah, they did the whole punk, post-punk, pop. I mean, everything that you could possibly think, besides like hip hop and country. I mean, they've done it all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they've had a fairly impressive career, I might say.
Yeah. And that's what I like about your music. I mean, it isn't all the same. It's not just all melancholy and like depressing. It's very uplifting. There's positive sides of your music. Like your new single, "Stay."
Yeah.
It's one of your new songs. What inspired you to write that song?
Yeah. So, in order to kind of get into that story, I probably have to backtrack into the first single we released this year, which is a very melancholy one called "Escape," and so. The funny thing is that I'll compare the two, right? So Escape is really melancholy and very deep and just kind of like pondering kind of like the meaning of pain in life, if that makes sense. And Stay is really kind of, it's not an upbeat song, but it's like, upper mid-tempo, and it kind of like gets your body moving immediately, and your foot tapping, and it's fun, and it's like a little bit bouncy, and it has kind of like a happy retro vibe, like romantic retro vibe. And the funny thing is that both of those songs kind of came out of the same experience. So my wife's mom has been battling cancer, and she first struggled with that in her 50s, and she's now, well into her 60s, and it kind of came back. And she has really good doctors, and we thought it was very well in hand. She went in, she did her chemo, and she came out with a completely clean bill of health. And that was in, I want to say, like, it was just before the holidays in 2017. Clean bill of health going into the holidays. Okay, everything's going to be good. And then we're coming back from, wherever we were traveling to for the holidays in January of 2018, and we get a call that she's back in the hospital. And it was just this really jarring thing where they had thought that it was gone, but it had metastasized quietly to her stomach lining. And there were a whole bunch of really crazy complications. We had to make an emergency trip back east to kind of help out with the doctors in the hospital, and nobody could really figure out what was going wrong. Like, at this point, nobody had figured out that the cancer was back. They just thought it was like symptoms of like, a bowel obstruction or this or that or whatever. But in the meantime, she couldn't eat, she couldn't drink anything for like 2 weeks, and so she was wasting away like in front of our eyes, and nobody was able to do anything about it. And she came very, very close to death. And it was a really intense and traumatic experience for both my wife and I. And so thankfully, with some encouragement, her team did in fact figure out that it was the cancer cells bearing down from the outside that was causing all the obstructions. And they got her on a good regimen to treat that, and she is doing well now. But it was kind of in the aftermath of that experience that we came back to LA, and we had been gone for like 2 weeks. We didn't have any food in the house, and our flight had landed at like, 7 p.m. or something. So we just went to our go-to little quiet neighborhood spot to grab a bite. We were just kind of processing, And I was really trying to be supportive for Pyle right there, my wife, excuse me. And this song popped into my head and it wouldn't leave me alone. And that was Escape, so that's how Escape kind of created itself. And Stay, it kind of happened, you know, like we weren't really out of the woods at that point. There was still like a few months of kind of back and forth and dealing with a whole bunch of stuff around the treatments. And so that year was like an interesting one and a rough one, you know, and throughout it I was trying to develop this song Escape, which kind of like made me feel a lot more than most songs that I write do. And so it was a little bit of like an uncomfortable experience creating it, if that makes sense. And so throughout that process of dealing with this family illness and this interesting little twist in my creative process, there was this moment where, you know, I forget exactly the situation that were dealing with, but something had popped up and we were having to kind of, like, it was another curveball and we were having to deal with it. And I just looked over and I realized that, like, dealing with all of these things, like, there's nobody who I would rather deal with the bad stuff, and obviously the good stuff, but the bad stuff is where your relationships get tested. And so I looked over and I was just like, you know, realized that there's nobody that I wanted to be in this with, other than my lady. So, and that's kind of how Stay popped into my head. And we've done a couple of video segments that I go a little bit deeper into the story and some of like the imagery that I use. You can find them on our Facebook and our YouTube. There's a lot of pretty unexpected things, even to me, that happened as part of the creation of that song and also the release. So both of those are really, really special ones to me.
Yeah, I really love that song. In fact, before my wife went to go take our dog for a walk, we were both singing Stay.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's really heartwarming to see so many people connect. And, you know, like, when we posted the video, I tried to keep the messaging really simple, and like immediately people started tagging their best friend or like their partner or in the comments, and it's so heartwarming to see people react like that. It's you know, it's humbling. It's beautiful.
You say that it kind of inspired you through a bad experience.
Yeah.
Can't believe it's finally over.
So crazy.
So ready for college.
Anyone can go to college for 4 years and party their ass off. But then what do? You're done, you go work in an office the rest of your life?
Oh yeah, and what are you gonna do?
By the time you're out of that prison, I'm gonna be the boss of my own company.
Yeah, what, slacker, skate, and smoke?
Well, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, let alone the rest of my life.
All we have left is the summer. It's gonna be gone before we know it.
So Stay kind of, it was just more like, throughout all the trauma of that year, the realization that I was with the right person, if that makes sense. But the interesting thing, so we've been working with a production duo called Talkboy TV. Their actual names are Jala and Mikey, but we've been working with them for a couple of years on different music videos. So the first video that we began working with them was Let's Just Dance. And we just kind of fell in love with the characters that came out of that video, so much so that they shot enough footage from that shoot to create kind of like a short film, but like with dialogue and narrative and whatever. I eventually did a score for that as well, and it went into a couple of film festivals, and it's really kind of a fun thing to watch. And everybody was kind of like, oh, I feel like there's more to this story, like what's going on in this person's life, and people started getting curious, but like about the characters. So what we decided to do is we decided to weave in those same characters through different music videos that we were going to be working on. So if you in Stay, and Let's Just Dance, you'll see some of the same faces. And so what we're trying to do is just kind of zoom into different areas of those characters' lives, like maybe it's, 2 years down the road or like 2 years ago or whatever, and kind of weave that through some of the stuff that we're doing.
So tell us about your new album, Whispers. What can we expect from the album, and how is it different from your previous EPs?
So Whispers was an interesting one because there are 4 songs that are reimaginations of tracks that were released with full production, but the entire EP is acoustic. So that's kind of a different move for us. So it was really fun to put together, and it resonates with people on a more kind of like bare and organic level, I would say, than some of our more produced stuff. But I always think it's amazing to be able to take a song that was so layered and strip it down to the bare minimum and just let the song speak for itself. So it was a really amazing project to be able to work on.
Well, I think that's all the time that we have today. Thank you so much, Will, for coming on the show. And,
thanks for having me, and thank you to everybody for watching.
Yeah. Well, tell everyone where they can find your music.
Oh yeah, we are on Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, Google Play, Amazon MP3, pretty much anywhere music is sold or streamed. And you can get us on our website, which is shipsofsailed.com. Sign up for our mailing list and you'll get a whole bunch of stories because, like I said, I am an open book and you can get to know me, I can get to know you. It'll be fun. Congratulations on the new show and thanks so much for having me. Hey, this is Will from Ships Have Sailed and you are watching KGUP Presents on inDtv, channel 140 on the Universe Network.